Lawrence County depends on WDXE News, on the air since 1951. This is The Legend. 105.3, 95.3, WDXE.
That's us. It is time for Stan Pierchoski. That's right. In Bulletproof Estate Planning with Stan Pierchoski, Estate Law. That's right. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, Jeff.
Good to
morning.
see you again.
Good morning.
Been a whole week.
I was going to say, it seems like it's been a week since I've been here.
been an entire week. Been a busy week.
Actually, it came by quick. I remember thinking last night, I was thinking, geez, it's going to be Friday already.
It's Friday already. It seems like the weeks really click off when you have things to do.
That's exactly right. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they seem to drag on. But I stay busy all the time, and it gets here fast. So.
Well, I have talked about it a little bit on the program this morning and throughout the week, but I've kept up with baseball a little more than I normally have. Because my grandson loves it so much. Mm-hmm. And so the World Series begins tonight.
Yes, it does.
And I think it's the Texas Rangers and Arizona Diamondbacks or something like that. And anyway, we're gonna. I'm getting geared up for it. I'm getting all geared up for it.
I don't watch a lot of baseball, but that's probably my favorite sport. At least it was throughout my younger days. I enjoyed playing it. There's a lot of strategy to baseball.
There is.
People think about baseball and you think, well, you hit it, you run the bases, or catch the ball. I mean, there's a lot to it. Because I know when I was in my cherished years, when I was in Little League, I was also in higher leagues when I was in school. But
yes.
When I was in Little League, we get somebody to coach. It'd be somebody's dad or something.
Right.
And it was okay. We'd learn stuff. But we got lucky for like a 2-year period. Somebody moved to town, and the son got on the same team as me, and his father was an ex-Major League Baseball player. Now, I was only in the league for about a year or two, what they call in the show, I guess they call it, right?
Yeah.
And we actually found his baseball card.
Oh, really?
And I remember his last name was Qualls, with a Q. But anyway, he would teach us stuff, and it was just so cool. How you get somebody that's running and you're getting caught in what they call a trap.
Oh, yeah.
And it seems like every time you get caught in a trap, the person almost always gets out because they get too close to one person with the ball or get past them. And he taught us this cool strategy, and then we would practice it and stuff. And then all of a sudden, just so happened one game that happened.
Oh yeah!
And everybody ran to the places they were supposed to be, and they had the trap people, have backup people, and you actually let the runner get by the guy in the trap because there's somebody else standing behind them that the other person throws the ball to, and they tag him out. It worked like a textbook, and we were just like, "Whoa, that's so cool!"
Worked good.
Oh, just a lot of strategies like that he would teach on how to. Just how to be on base which base to be on at certain times with certain circumstances.
There is a tremendous amount. The more you learn about it, the more you see it.
And I played shortstop all the time.
Really?
That was like my home, right? And so one day he said, "You give the lineup." He says, "You're on first base," and I'm all pouty, and I said, He gets me to the side, looks at me, and gets real stern, and he says, "Listen." He says, "You want to play ball, and somebody asks you, can you play this position? You want to say, yes, I can." He says, "So you go out there and you learn how to play first base." And I thought, okay, why not? I actually pitched by a couple of games, but I never quite had that fastball like I needed.
Yeah.
I could throw it, but if I threw it fast, then there was no telling where it was going to go.
First base was my favorite place to play.
Yeah, a lot of action.
I liked first base, and I did some pitching, but first base was my spot.
Yeah. I could hurl a ball from shortstop to first base pretty good and fast, but I got on the pitcher's mound and I had to hit that little spot. I could hit it, but if I threw it fast, it was a wild pitch. I could not control it. I imagine if I'd have stuck with it a while, I might have gotten better at it, but I never did get too much doing that. So,
well, once you tune into some of those strategies and the pitching duels with the batters, especially in the major leagues, are
there's a whole science to that.
And for some, it's like it's just boring. But if you're kind of tuned into it and kind of understand what they're going through, it's. And the other thing about baseball is you can kind of do something else while the game is on, and when something happens, you can kind of poke your head up and And so you don't have to be just intensely every minute watching it.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people say baseball's too slow.
Yeah,
football's more action all the time.
But you could read the paper while you watch the baseball game.
I just always enjoyed that game. And it's good American sport.
Good American sport, all American. That's right.
But the series is always pretty cool.
Yeah, it is fun to watch.
I don't know if you remember, but when I was in high school, when the series was playing, they would always either let you carry a little transistor radio around, or they would put it on in study hall.
Really? No, I never had that.
Yeah, they actually would allow that. You weren't allowed to have any of that stuff, but for World Series, we were allowed to do that.
It was a big deal. It's America's pastime. That's what they say. It's a big, big deal.
All right, so
what you been doing since I saw you last?
I guess we got to shift gears a little bit. we got a seminar coming up. We had that one last week that I talked about, that week, Thursday before I was here last week, and had a banner crowd for that one. So we got another one coming up here at WLX in the back, and that's on November the 18th, and that's a Saturday one. We're doing that again. Lawrenceburg seems to like Saturday seminars, and I get the reasons why. Mm-hmm. But we're going to do that at 10 o'clock here at WLX in the back of the building, and we call it Will's Trust in the Nursing Home, and you can come and sit in on that. It's about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes long. Then we have this question and answer period. So if you hadn't been to one of my live seminars, you might consider coming, because I get great reviews on them. And, we talk about stuff, it's only an hour or so long. So, I mean, it's hard to do much of a deep dive into anything, but we talk on a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of information. A lot of people who leave, I think the people in my office refer to this as a fire hose of information. Yes. And it kind of is. But, you don't have to retain everything. You just sort of have to get the basic understanding of options that are available. And if you have an interest in that, then we sit down and do a deep dive into your personal dynamics and family dynamics and figure out the solution, stuff like that. So anyway, that's coming up November the 18th. I'll bring it up again at the end of the hour. So, I was listening to the radio on the way over, and you folks do your quote of the day, or you do a couple quotes, it sounds like. Yeah,
we do.
And one of the quotes I do in my presentation, it's not really a quote. It's actually the title of a legal treatise, but I put it up as a quote.
Yeah.
And that quote is, "What hard work giveth, the nursing home taketh away." And whenever I do that, I always want to make sure that, it sounds like I'm picking on the nursing home, but I'm not. I have no concerns with the care that nursing homes give. I don't even really get involved in the actual care that happens. That I'm sure I hear that that's wonderful care, and I'm sure that it is. So I don't pick on that one bit. And actually, in that quote, it's not the nursing home that ever takes anything away from you. It's the TennCare system. It's the state of Tennessee.
The TennCare system, yeah.
Because the nursing home always gets paid. In other words, if you go in and you're paying privately, they get paid. If you qualify for TennCare and get on TennCare, then TennCare pays them. Right? I mean, so they always get paid, so they don't take anything from you. That's how people say it, but that's not exactly who the authority that's taking the property. The property's lost through the TennCare Act, where they during their estate recovery or just in their eligibility process, where they claim if they can claim you're not eligible, and then sort of put you in a private pay situation. So but again, if you're in the nursing home industry, please don't. I don't mean to be insulting when I say that. It's really the administration of the whole thing that we deal with. So,
well, TennCare system. That while you said that, it kind of reminded me. Of course, you and I have been talking for a while now, and we've gone through Will's Trust, the difference in why trust can be a great answer and a good solution for a lot of people. But the TennCare system itself, maybe a lot of people don't understand exactly how the TennCare system actually works. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, maybe you could explain the TennCare system that our state runs and how it works and how it can affect us.
I can give you the Reader's Digest version, because if I brought all the rules of TennCare in here, it would fill this room. I'm sure. From ceiling to floor.
I'm sure. But how it generally affects most people.
Right.
And how it generally works.
And there's areas of it that I don't even deal with. There's people say, well, TennCare is welfare. And it's like, well, it's not. There is a form of TennCare that's welfare, but I don't even deal with it.
Well, are we paying into TennCare as we work, as we speak?
Absolutely.
So
even
if you're not using TennCare in any way, shape, form, or fashion, part of your taxation is going to TennCare. See, I don't know that I really understood that until you and I were talking.
I mean, I talked maybe a few weeks ago about folks that make the comment that that's welfare or something. And first of all, it's not welfare. And second of all, some folks will bring to the attention and say, well, if I go to the nursing home and rack up a bill, I have an obligation. I think I should pay it. And I think that's a great and magnanimous character. And I'm that way too, pay all my bills. But I like to ask the question, do we owe it? Because we have been paying into this system all our lives. And we have involuntarily been participating. I didn't remember getting a letter saying, do you want to contribute to TennCare every paycheck? And they involuntarily make us participate. And when you do that, when you involuntarily participate in a program like that, and the courts have said that raises the level of the benefits to an entitlement. It's not welfare at all. You are entitled to this because you paid for it. Now, there is a version of TennCare that's welfare for folks that are maybe born disabled or can never
Right.
take care of themselves
For the truly disabled.
And then and that's and then TennCare even then takes the position of being the position of last payment. So they require you to apply for either SSDI or SSI or something first before they'll pay. So, but they will. Okay, so to get to your question, let's kind of back up and go to the fundamentals, because this is maybe misunderstood, and that is, back in the '60s, during the President Johnson era.
Okay.
I remember it well. Vietnam was
Oh,
full
yeah.
scale.
Yeah.
A lot of the '60s movement was going on. Anyway, in roughly 1964, two major acts came out in this area. One was called the Medicare Act. Okay. Now, Medicare is also something I don't do a lot with. We touch on it sometimes in what we do, but it's insurance. That's the act that came out and said, okay, during your life, you got Blue Cross Blue Shield, you got insurance, you got something else, I don't know,
Right.
Physicians Mutual, you got some kind of insurance, medical insurance, okay?
Right.
So you fall and break your leg, or you get hurt in an accident and they take you to the hospital. That's an insurable event, and and insurance pays that. And insurance works, everybody knows how it works. You pay your premiums and your deductibles, and you make a claim, and then they pay it if it's a covered event. So when you turn 65, you can get Medicare, and Medicare is insurance. There's several different providers behind that, but it works just like insurance. You pay a premium. Typically, it's a lot. Like it's every 3 months you pay a premium. Mm-hmm. It's a sliding scale. How they figure it out. It's kind of based on how much money you make and stuff
Sure.
like that. And you have deductibles. Okay, sort of certain deductibles. So, but if you go and fall down, break your leg, or in an accident and go to the hospital, again, your insurance, Medicare, is going to be the primary payer for that. Now,
Right.
Medicare consists of Part A, which everybody gets. That's
Right.
hospitalization, doctors, stuff like that. Part B is the other stuff, and they don't pay for everything. Okay, they pay
Okay.
for stuff, and they don't pay for everything, or for some things they pay for, they don't pay the full amount. So most people purchase what is called a supplement, and there's a bazillion, blue million of those out there. You can buy a supplement that pays for what Part B doesn't pay for. Then of course you can get the prescription drug supplements, things like Part D and the Humana. So there's all kind of things out there, and a lot of organizations that sell those supplements. But the bottom line is all of that works just like insurance. Now, they also came out in 1964 with another major act called the Medicaid Act. Now, it's surprising you can get these two things mixed up. I mean, there's only two letters of the alphabet different, right? I mean, it's almost like they tried to confuse them, right?
Yeah.
So you got Medicare and Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is way, way different. It is not. People say Medicare and Medicaid almost like they're synonymous, and they are not. They are so different. Medicaid is the only thing out there that pays for long-term care. It's not an insurance. So if you fall down, break your leg, and go to the hospital, Medicaid never gets involved. When Medicaid gets involved is if you go to a long-term care facility, whether it's whatever version of it is. We have different versions, like being in a nursing facility or being in assisted living.
Wow.
Most states have home and community-based systems and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
those are, what we're talking about there is, if you need help with what they call a couple of the ADLs. The ADLs are activities of daily living. Okay, and there's like 6 or 8 of them. There's like bathing yourself, toileting yourself, clothing yourself, eating yourself, getting up and moving around. 6 or 8 of them. And if you need help with 2 or 3 of them, then you qualify for full-skilled nursing facility. Okay. Now, some people need help with all of them. Some people just need help with a couple.
Yeah.
Some, if you only need help with 1 or 2, that's more of an assisted living setup.
Yeah.
So, or dementia comes into the picture, that sort of trumps all the ADLs.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how many ADLs you can do if you have dementia. That's sort of a trump card.
Sure.
Now what's the solution for people who need help with the activities of daily living or have dementia? And it's nothing medical. They don't take you to the emergency room and they look you over and say, okay, we can do surgery, or we can do chemotherapy or radiation, or we can do this. The solution is care. You need taken care of to help do these things. Okay, if you can't walk, and you got to be moved around, where you go. I mean, you need this third-party help, and
Sure.
so it's care. It's long-term care, because usually when you need this, you don't just go there for a week or 2, what they call respite care. I mean, you don't just go there for a couple of weeks and then come back again. If you need care, you're usually in a facility and get that care on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And that's where Medicaid comes in. It's the only thing that pays for that.
Okay.
I get people often say, I've got Medicare, but I got a rider that pays for if I go into long-term care. And there is no such thing. Okay, there isn't. Because usually when they bring that into me and I sit down and look at it, I point out to them, say, this is what it does. and that's not one of the things that it does. The only thing that will pay for that is Medicaid. Now, if we have this 1964, we get the Medicaid Act. It is a federal act. So is Medicare. But the Medicare, the Insurance Act, works the same everywhere. It's insurance, and it's the same everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are in the United States, it's the same. Medicaid's a little different. Medicaid is also a federal act. However, each state is allowed to govern their own Medicaid. Okay, so because of that, each state has their own version of Medicaid. Our version is called TennCare.
Okay.
All states have a cute little name for it. Out in California, they call it CalMed, and Massachusetts, MassMed. I mean, they all get some kind of, and some don't give it any name at all. Some, like Alabama, calls it Alabama Medicaid. No, but they all have their name.
They're not that creative in Alabama.
Well, yeah, I guess. They all have their own name for it, and they all have their own version of it. Now, when I say version of it, they all have to act within the Medicaid Act. So let's think of the Medicaid Act as this big circle. Now, the state can do a lot of things. They can choose to do certain things as long as they stay in the big circle. Okay? So, and that's what happens. Out of 50 states, we almost have 50 separate systems. Now, some are very similar. Like Tennessee is very similar to about 21 other states.
Okay.
And, similar meaning when they deal with eligibility and stuff, they're called income cap states. So they have a cap on income. Mm-hmm. They have a maximum and minimum on what we call the monthly maintenance needs allowance. They have a resource allowances of how much money you can have or how much you can shelter. They have all these rules, and the rules, they can govern themselves, but they have to at least be within the confines of the Medicaid Act. But they can do what they want from a state version, and often do, because people call me and talk to me and say, I've been talking to my brother, and he can do this and he can do that, and I came to your seminar and you said we can't do that. What's up? And I asked where he is, and I said, well, he lives in Florida.
Okay.
And that's a perfect reason why it's different. Florida's got, in my opinion, I wish we had some of the rules that Florida has. Florida, if you're an attorney in Florida, you've got a lot to work with. Okay,
yeah.
When people come to you and are worried about long-term care, they can do some cool things. There's like 4 things right off the bat that are very cool that I wish we could do. We can do some version of them, but not as much as there. So there's a big difference from state to state. So right off the bat, don't think it's the same everywhere, because it is not. And we even run into that when people are going into long-term care and they live on the border. Like we got people out, way out in West Tennessee that live right next to Missouri, or vice versa. I had a case where they lived in Missouri, but the nursing home they wanted mom to go to was in Tennessee.
Okay.
So, and we can make that work for us sometimes. If mom's in the Tennessee nursing home, then I can use Tennessee rules, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the fundamentals of it. Now, the other thing is, because Medicare is insurance, you pay for it. And but Medicaid is not insurance. It is what they call a means-tested program. And so because it's mean-tested, they create, you get it, and you're entitled to it. Let me talk about the entitlement.
Okay.
When that came out, it's what they call mandatory participation. You don't get a choice.
Okay.
Kind of like income taxes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they ask you if you want to pay income tax, you say, yeah, sure, I'll take some out of my check every April 15th. I'll square up with you. It's mandatory participation by the legislature. When you have a program that you have to participate in, then it rises to a higher level as to what you can do with it. Okay,
Right.
So now that courts have said you are entitled, and I'll confine to TennCare. Now, when I talk about TennCare, I'm talking about Medicaid. I'm talking about TennCare's version of Medicaid.
Right.
And that's the only reason I should talk about TennCare, because all the other states are different. So no sense wasting brain cells on what they do in other states unless it's necessary. So the courts have evaluated certain TennCare cases that have come to them. They have said over and over that TennCare benefits are an entitlement. You are entitled to them. So you should get them. And they say so because you've involuntarily participated and you've paid for it all your life. Now, but they say, now the flip side of that is, it is an entitlement. However, to get the benefits, you have to qualify. There's an eligibility process. So it's like, these benefits are here and they're there for you, but you kind of don't just get them because you waltz in and say you need them. You just don't waltz in and say, what, I need to be here in a nursing home, so how about you guys pay the bill? So it's like, okay, you have to become eligible for long-term care, or for TennCare to pay your long-term care.
Yes.
Now, when I say long-term care, I'm talking about whatever version of it you need. In Tennessee, we got these program called Choices, and it's Choices 1, 2, and 3, and there are different levels of care. Good way to look at it is full-scale nursing facility, assisted living
Yes.
and a home and community based type system. Assisted living is that, but you can actually stay at home and get hospice care and stuff like that. So
Sure.
we got different levels of care, and so we'll just kind of group all of them together for now. And so when you got this 10 care system, and you're entitled to it, but you have to be eligible for it. You have to qualify. So if you're in a situation, Aunt Gertrude or somebody just needs more care than you can provide, and you're thinking, okay, perhaps this loved one has to go to a nursing home or some level of care. What is that going to look like? Well, there's really only three things you have to qualify for. It makes it sound pretty simplistic, doesn't it? The only trouble is under each one of those categories is a plethora of rules that it's just riddled with rules. But the first one, the very first category you have to satisfy to be eligible, and it is a category I have nothing to do with. So it's called medically needy, which means you have to need to be in a facility. Okay, and that's a medical opinion.
Right.
I mean, you just, like I say, you can't go down and check yourself in so you can hang around and play Parcheesi with the guys, right? Yeah, you have a doctor, some medical professional say this person needs to be in care.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now, even if you can't care for somebody, you need to go to the doctor and have the doctor say, okay, this person needs this level of care because of this. But the family is in a position where they can't care for him because they work for a living, they're struggling themselves, they don't have enough housing, they don't have enough room, whatever. And then all those things together that create the medically needy. Okay, so if you're medically needy, that's the first thing. You got to need to be in care, which means you got to have something wrong with you. You got to have stroke, you got to have dementia, you got to need this help. And then again, there's all kind of, if you call me and say, well, I've got this problem and this problem, will I qualify for long-term care? And I'm going to say, I haven't got a clue. I mean, I know certain things I deal with on a daily basis, but there's a lot of things. We had one once that we were concerned about that because it was really like the manic depressive thing.
Right.
And I didn't know. I never had a case where the person was manic depressive and on care. So we had this evaluation done, and it turned out that required it.
Yeah.
To a certain level.
To a certain level, yeah.
And so that's a medical thing. So the very first thing you have to do, let's just say somebody goes into a nursing home, and here's how it normally looks, okay? So if it's a little different for something you've had, here's 90% of the time, here's what it looks like. You got a person, basically elderly. Let me back up a little bit. The Medicaid I'm talking about, the 10 care I'm talking about, is 65 years or older. Because I mentioned earlier, when you get 65, it opens up the Medicare window, and it opens up the window for care in Medicaid. Not you don't get anything from Medicaid, but if you go to a long-term facility, one of the requirements the fundamental requirements, you got to be a Tennessee resident, you got to be 65 or older, stuff like that.
Sure.
So, if here's the way it normally looks. Somebody falls and gets hurt, or is in an accident, or has a stroke, or what we call a spell of illness. Okay, like you get sick and you go to the hospital.
Sure.
And you're there in the hospital, and they mess with you for a little while. They figure out what's wrong with you, then they fix it and get you on antibiotics, or you get your broken hip and they fix it, or put in a new one, just whatever they do. And they keep you there for a couple of days. Now, if they keep you there for 3 midnights, you may have heard that before, 3 days essentially, but they define it as 3 midnights. So if you're there for 3 midnights, then what they'll do, because of your affliction, classic examples are recovering from a stroke, recovering from an accident, or something like that. Now,
sure.
Let's use stroke. If you're recovering from a stroke, they're going to discharge you to a facility for rehabilitation, and they'll send you to a long-term care facility.
Right.
And one of the reasons they do that is because it's thousands of dollars a day to rehabilitate in the hospital. It's only hundreds of dollars a day to do it in a long-term care facility. But you need to go through this rehabilitation. Now, when you go through this rehabilitation, Medicare is still paying the bill, because when you had a stroke and went to the hospital, that was an insurable event.
Okay.
I mean, you're not staying anywhere in a facility just yet, so Medicaid's not involved. It's a Medicare event. It's all insurance. And so they will discharge you to a facility to rehabilitate. Now, this is where, when I tell people in my seminar, I say Medicaid is the only thing that pays for long-term care. Somebody always jump up like they're sitting on a spring and say, wait a minute, we had somebody that went to the hospital and they sent them to the nursing home and Medicare paid every bit of it. Okay, now the answer to that is yes, that's exactly right, because that's not long-term care. I'm explaining that now. That is rehabilitation. So they will send you to rehabilitate. You broke your hip and you got to learn to get your gait back and use your hip because you can't just start walking on it. You got to know how to deal with it, and so on medically. So you go and you start to rehabilitate. And it's true, Medicare will pay for that. Now they have limits on what they'll pay for. And they will pay, because you always hear people say, well, Aunt Gertrude's still in her 100 days. Okay, so don't get too focused on that 100 days because it does say they will pay up to 100 days.
Yes.
But it's not guaranteed. The 100 days is based on the rehabilitation.
Sure.
It could be, it could be 30 days, it could be 10 days, it could be 94 days, it could be anything. It could be 100 days. Now, when you rehabilitate, TennCare will pay the first 20 days. Okay, they will pay 100%. After that, day 21, and if you get 100 days, from day 21 to day 100, or for as long as you're there, they will pay 80%. Okay, now, most people's supplements that they have, remember we talked before about having Part A, Part B, and then buying supplements? Almost everybody's supplement will pay that 20% that you're supposed to pay. So from as far as you're concerned, it's still no out-of-pocket. Okay?
Okay.
And so now, you may go 100 days, but it gets cut short for reasons like this. If you are doing well with rehabilitation and you become rehabilitated,
yes.
Okay, let's just say it's a broken hip, and after a couple of weeks you're just walking like a champ, you've got it mastered. Medicare will stop because they have to, the facility gives reports every so often, and the reports are, okay, they're fully rehabilitated. So Medicare will send you a notice and say, we're going to quit in 5 days. Because they don't typically say why, they just tell you they're going to quit, but that's why.
Sure.
It's rehabilitation, you've done it.
Okay.
Time to go home. Or people will get in like with a stroke, and they'll reach a point let's say they reach a point at 60 days or 70 days, and medical professionals say in their report, we've worked with this person for 60 days, 70 days, and we're convinced that this is best they're going to get. They haven't been improving the last couple of weeks, and they're not going to get any better. So they've plateaued, right? That's
sure.
They didn't rehabilitate 100% and get back to where they were, but this is best it's going to get. They'll terminate then because it's for rehabilitation, and if the medical say that's best it's going to get, they're not going to pay for anymore. And I have heard, well, I know for a fact that if you do things like refuse physical therapy, you're in the facility and they say, okay, come on, it's time to do this. Get the walker out and go down the hall and up a few stairs to get blood moving, and you refuse to do it. They'll terminate because you have to rehabilitate, okay?
Yes.
And you're not. And it's not a free ride, so you don't go there and just hang out and lay in a bed and just say, I'll do it when I feel like it. And I've also heard, and I don't know that there's a policy on this, but I hear from people that report back to me, and these people were actually people that work in those facilities, okay? That if you refuse it twice, they'll drop you. That doesn't seem like too many times. Now, it gets worse. I've heard people say that, you go in and say, okay, Aunt Gertrude, it's time for your physical therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, and Aunt Gertrude say something like, you know what, I'm just so tired today, and I don't feel good. I'm sore. I'm so sore. I just don't think I could do it. And it's like, okay, that's fine, Aunt Gertrude. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Okay.
I have heard that sometimes that goes back and gets marked or interpreted as a refusal.
Oh, wow.
And if you refuse it, then they won't pay. If you're there to rehabilitate, if you actually refuse it, they won't pay. And so you can get terminated for that. There's probably a couple other reasons why Medicare can terminate, but they probably all fall in those kind of categories.
Sure.
Now, they often go 100 days. I've often said that they seem to be somewhat generous with that in the most part. You'd think they would fight tooth and nail to pay for as few days as they could, right? But when I say generous, maybe I mean that in a very loose term, but they often go 100 days.
Okay.
And so now, if you're still in the nursing home, if day 101 comes, they absolutely, positively, under any circumstance, will not pay for day 101. It stops at 100 days no matter what your condition is. You still could be a train wreck and not have rehabilitated, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. 100 days is where it ends.
That's where it ends.
And that's that's statutorial in the law. That's where it ends. So if it turns out you're recovering from a stroke, and at the end of the rehabilitation, no matter how long it goes, the medical opinion is still that you have to be in a facility because you still need help with these activities of daily living. Now we're talking about long-term care. Okay. It has shifted from the thing Medicare pays for, because so far Medicaid hadn't been a player in the game yet.
And Medicaid is eventually TennCare. Is that right?
Well, Medicaid here in Tennessee is TennCare. Yeah,
yes,
that's
okay.
our version of it.
Yes.
So, when I say I try to say TennCare all the time, but if I say Medicaid, they're interchangeable here in Tennessee.
Okay.
And so after 100 days, the only thing that's going to pay for that is TennCare. It is the only thing. Now, with one exception, and I don't want to confuse it, but there is such a thing as long-term care insurance. It's a specific kind. Few people have it, but some do. But I won't get into that, because if you have it, then you know what it does. And if you don't have it, you probably can't get it, because it's very age and health dependent. And it's very expensive for insurance. So anyway, if now you're going to stay in the facility,
okay,
and nobody's paying for it, and now they're going to look to you. Now here's how that looks in reality. If you let's say you're approaching your 100 days, and there's no reason to think it's going to get terminated, on day about 60 or 70, the facility's going to approach you or the family. Okay. And if you're in a nursing home and you're not able to discuss it, but they'll approach you or they'll approach your loved ones, and they'll want to have a meeting and discussion. And the discussion is going to be about this. All right, this runs out about 20 or 30 days, and it doesn't look like medically they're going to be going home. It looks like they're going to be staying in care.
Okay.
When that happens, our bill's $9,000 a month, okay, or whatever, and that's the average here, $9,000 a month around here. I'm not talking about Nashville or
right,
Knoxville or
right,
Memphis. It's much more in
our neck of the woods.
Yeah, around here. But it just recently went up from about $286 a day to $305. So wow, it's about $9,000 a month. And and again, the nursing home is not, they're not being bad people doing this. They're providing a service. They're wanting to know how they're going to be compensated.
Yeah.
Which I run a business and know how it works. You run a business, you know how it works. You don't do anything. You don't do it for free. You may do some things for free, but basically you're in business to earn a revenue. And so they're saying, look, this is going to run out. And they're actually giving you a heads up. It's better that than say, hey, guess what? Today's 101.
Right.
And it's the first of the month. You need to write a check for it.
Right.
No sense being blindsided. So they say, this runs out. And if they have to stay, and it looks like they do, we'd like to know how we're going to get paid. Because if you say, well, we have no possible way of paying you, let's just say you just say, I haven't got a clue. I have no way of paying you. They don't have to keep you. They can discharge you at the end of 100 days because and think about it. If you can't pay for the care,
yeah, there's
no obligation to the facility to do that. So they talk about how we're going to get paid.
That's true.
And now this eligibility starts to come in, because if there's only two people that can pay for this.
Yes.
You, by some means of private paying, or a third party. Okay.
Yeah.
Now the third party, 99% of the time, is going to be TennCare. I mentioned briefly a third party could be long-term care insurance, but they really just pay a portion of it. So let's just kind of leave them out of the mix for now. It's the same thing.
Sure.
So there's like two parties that can pay. It's going to be either you private paying or TennCare paying your bill. And so now the question is, okay, how do I get TennCare to pay it? Because it's pretty darn expensive. And so now you can get them to pay it, but now you have to become eligible. All right, so getting back to what I said before, the first criteria of eligibility is medically needy. So let's assume we've satisfied that. We had a stroke, we've recovered the best we're going to do, but we still need help because we never got back a lot of motor function or whatever. So we need help, enough help that we require care. So now we want to become eligible. Okay, now this eligibility takes a while to do. Doesn't happen overnight, especially if you have assets. Okay.
Yes.
Now, let me back up a little bit, because you hear me talk about these trusts, these crisis planning tools, ways to save assets, change them from countable to non-countable, all these things.
Yes.
For you to not have to pay the bill and shift it to the third party state of Tennessee under the TennCare Act, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't have anything, let's just say you're broke or indigent.
Yeah.
If you're completely broke, you'll get TennCare right away, because you'll qualify by default because you don't have anything.
Right.
Okay, so which is not what we do. I mean, if you don't need me to qualify for TennCare if you haven't got anything.
Yeah.
I'll even
help
qualify
you, anyway.
I'll even help you fill out the form, because when they say what do you own, it's basically nothing. What's your income? Pretty darn low. So if there's certain levels of poverty that you fall below, you qualify without even doing anything.
Right.
So it's a little different what we do. We try to take people that have a lifetime of wealth and qualify and still hang on to their wealth.
Right.
So you have to become eligible, and so that now starts. It takes a while. It takes a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And so when people are in this boat, if they come to me early in that 100 days of Medicare, mm-hmm. that's a blessing, because we have that time to work. and they're not bleeding to death financially, private paying.
Yes.
If you come to me and say, hey, Gertrude's 100 days runs out Wednesday, it's like, well, brace yourself for a little private pay time,
Yes.
because even in the best of situations, I can't have everything converted over that fast.
Yeah.
When I say convert over and change assets around, we have to deal with the insurance companies that have your IRAs. We have to deal with if you have annuities,
Right.
we have to modify them. We got to deal with them, and they are just prolific feet draggers when it comes to acting jiffy. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got to deal with them, and it takes time. So just to throw that note in there, if folks come to me early in that 100 days, that's a big advantage to you. So now you got two other categories to qualify to be eligible. One is called income. Now, income and the other one's called assets or resources. Now, the difference between the two is income. Most people know the difference.
Yeah.
Income is what comes in. I mean, it's what you get paid. So if you're of advanced years, we'll make it simple. You're receiving Social Security payments.
Sure.
Maybe a pension from your job.
Yep.
Maybe RMDs, required minimum distributions from a retirement account. I don't know. Maybe something else. But it's stuff that comes in every month, right? That is income, and you have to qualify. Now, we're at what we call an income cap state. So if you make more than $2,752 a month in income, you're not eligible. Now,
Wait a minute. 2,000.
2,752.
That is not very much.
It's not. Individually, not collectively. I mean, you have income and your wife has income. Okay, so
Right.
you're in the applicant's income, the person wanting to apply. It's not very much, but don't panic, because technically you're not eligible, but there's like a form over substance fix for that.
Okay. Okay.
In other words, let's say you had $1,000 more than you had 3,752. We can get you qualified, if that's the thing that's disqualifying us. We can get you qualified simply by opening up what is called sometimes they call it a Miller Trust. It actually is a qualified income trust. It's a trust you open up where your $2,572 go in your bank account, but anything over that you get goes into this trust. And if it does, it's not counted against you for having too much income.
Okay.
Because when you're in care, typically all your income goes to the cost of care. So all your income's going to, if you're in a nursing home, all your income's going to go to the nursing home.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to complicate it right now because we're just doing the overview. And there's sometimes we can shift income from one spouse to the other, but let's just leave that out of the mix for now. So when you're single, and most of the time when you're married, your income goes to the cost of care. Okay. And the theory behind that is they're taking care of you. You live there, they feed you, they put a roof over your head. They're entitled to the income that you would spend on yourself if you were staying at home and not in a nursing home. So it makes sense. I don't like it any better, but it makes sense. I get the logic. So all the income goes to the cost of care. If you're over that amount, we can fix it. There's a way to fix it. And it's not my way. It's what the TennCare has constructed for people that are over. And this is what I meant by form over substance. The rule says if you have $1 over, if you make $2,753, disqualified. No ifs, ands, or buts. But then they turn around and say, but if you put that money in a QIT, it doesn't matter how much money you get. Now the limit is as long as your income is less than the cost of care. So now your income has to be less than $9,000 a month. You individually, not you and your wife. If you're in that boat, there's some things we can do, but it takes on a little bit different posture.
Okay.
I don't have too many people that have $9,000 a month income or more. Here in our neck of the woods, no. So we can fix income pretty easy. So that's category number 2. Category number 3 is where my office probably spends most of their time. We get parked in category number 3, which is called resources. And that's the stuff you own. It's not income. It's the stuff you own. It's your house. It's your bank account. It's your investment account. It is your CDs that you have. I mean, it is your classic cars you have in a garage. I mean, it's just whatever you own. It's the farm. The house or the farm. It's other real estate. Your summer home or your vacation home down on the Gulf, right? It's all, everything other than income is a resource. It's
all
stuff
your
you
resources,
own.
yeah.
And now you have to qualify resource-wise. So we're still trying to be eligible. We've satisfied number 1, medically needy. We've satisfied number 2, income. Now you got to get them all. It's not, it's no 2 out of 3 and you get there, right? Mm-hmm. You got to get them all. And so now we got to qualify for under resources, stuff we own.
Okay.
And they have these are the rules that everybody hears about and sees on the internet. So it's going to, and this is stuff I talk about a lot. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but this is where they say, as far as what your resources are, you have certain exempt resources we won't count. There's a small list of that. And then they'll say everything else you own is countable. And you can have no more than $2,000 of countable assets. And so people panic when they hear that and say, well, good grief. I mean, who doesn't have $2,000 worth of stuff, right? I mean, if you sold all the junk in your house, you'd make more than $2,000, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a ridiculously low number, right?
Right.
And so, so like that's what I meant. If you're indigent, you'll qualify by default. You don't have to do anything. You don't have that kind of money. And so, what we want to do is we want to become eligible resource-wise. So we want to manipulate the assets from countable to non-countable. And I've talked about that many times.
Yeah,
How to change. There's all kind of ways to do that. It
Unbelievable.
doesn't. Here's the thing here's the takeaway. It does not mean $2,000 to your name. Now listen to me on this. I'm going to venture into a little bit of legal thought process. You got to think.
Okay.
You got to think like a lawyer in the way the statute's written. The statute clearly says you have to have less than $2,000 of countable assets. Now the key word in that sentence is not $2,000, which is what everybody focuses on. You go talk to your guy across the street, and your buddy Bubba, and he says, "Oh, you got too much money. You got to spend it all. Get down to about $1,500 in the bank, and then apply." Doesn't mean that. Listen to what it says. $2,000 of countable assets. Countable is the operative word. It is a category. Okay.
Yeah.
So the question should come up. Well, if there's a category called countable, are there other categories? The answer is yes, quite a few. Okay. Well, if I have countable assets, can I have non-countable assets? And the answer is yes, you can.
Yeah.
Now, my thought process would be, okay, so far so good. If I have countable assets, can I turn them into non-countable assets?
Yeah.
Can I just go from one category to another? The answer is yes, you can. Depends on the asset. There's different ways to do it, but absolutely. So if I have less than $2,000 of countable assets, I'll qualify, right? Yeah. Okay, well, how about if I have less than $2,000 of countable assets, but I've got $500,000 in non-countable? Can I qualify? Well, let's go back to what the statute says. You have to have less than $2,000 of countable assets.
Yes.
That's what it says. That's what you have to satisfy. The answer to the question is yes, you can do that. And there's rules that allow us to do this. And they're not my rules. I don't make them up. It's the TennCare rules. And it comes from a lot of things. When these federal acts get adopted by the states, one is the Deficit Reduction Act of 2005, the Catastrophic Illness Act that came out, in the late 90s. And they have rules in here. And a lot of the rules are things like the spousal impoverishment rules. Because at some point in time, it was like, okay, Jeff, if you go in a nursing home and you're this black hole of cost of $9,000 a month, your wife is like, I care, I'm worried about him, and I love him and I care for him, but I'm also a little concerned what happens when he sucks up everything and I don't have anything to live on.
That's right.
I'm going to be indigent, because it's all gone to this black hole of cost, right?
Right.
And so they created these spousal impoverishment rules designed to keep the spouse, the healthy spouse that's not in care, from becoming impoverished, okay?
Yeah.
Because statistically, 7 out of 10 people that go in the nursing home will become impoverished within 1 year. Can you imagine that?
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Now that is, and 70% of people over 65 will require some form of long-term care at one of those levels. So those are the kind of thoughts that need to keep you up and will wake you up in the middle of the day. And so, so that we have those spousal impoverishment rules. So there's ways we can manipulate assets and keep them in the family, keep them with the spouse, give them to the children, do other things with them, and keep them for our benefit, which is what we worked all our life for to do, right?
Yeah.
So when we can do that, we can adjust our assets in such a way that we satisfy the criteria. We have less than $2,000 of countable assets, and now we're satisfied in all three criteria. Now we're eligible. So, just to touch on how we deal with that, a lot of people, including most facilities that you go to, you'll go to a facility and they will say to you, because they usually have a department that helps people get qualified for Medicaid, right? TennCare. And so they'll say, listen, we'll fill the application out for you. It's a 16-page application. We'll fill it out for you. And they will. Now, bless their heart, I don't think they have any thought process here. They just are trying to help.
Sure.
And so they said, well, and so they ask you. They say, Jeff, name, Social Security number, on, and they put down your medical condition. And they get to the thing about income, and they say, what are all your sources of income? And you tell them, and they write it down. And you say, I got Social Security, I got about $2,000, and I got a pension that's, so it's about $3,000 or $4,000 a month. Then they say, do you own a house? Yes, I do own a house. What's it worth?
Mm-hmm.
Write it down. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything else at the house? Yeah, I have a second piece of property, and haven't done anything with it, but one of these days I might, but I have this lot on the other side of town. Or I own something down in Florida or something. They say, well, you have any money in the bank? Yeah, we got a checking account, got a savings account. My wife and I have got a CD account we put together. Got some 529 plans for the kids' college plan. The young fella comes in here from time to time. They put all that down. They write it down because those are the questions on the form. On the 16-page application, those are the questions that they ask. And they're filling it out. And then they'll mail it in or fax it in. 10-Care is the only thing that still does fax.
Okay.
Anyway, you can do it electronically, but they prefer fax, believe it or not. But anyway, so you turn it in. Now, I'm sitting here and say, all right, it does not take a college degree or a PhD to know the answer that they're going to come back with.
Yes.
Because the statute has certain limitations on, let's assume you're medically needy, on income and resources.
Yeah.
And you have failed both of them.
Yeah.
So why send in an application when we have a 100% chance of it being denied? But that's what happens. And they deny it. Now they will come to you and pretty much say, Jeff, you got too much. Just keep paying the bill here. And when you get down to have nothing, then we'll send it back in, and you'll qualify then because now you won't have anything, right? So I look at that.
That's how all their assets get eat up.
That's right. And now there's a better way to do that, and it's they come to me and I say, okay, you got too much stuff. Let's work some magic. Let's move it around. Let's use this rule to do this rule to do that. We'll turn it around. We turn it into these Medicaid compliant annuities, which is you take a bunch of money that's a countable asset. We turn it into a non-countable stream of income. Okay, we're allowed to do that as long as it's Medicaid compliant. We talked about stuff like that, about it being actuarially sound, and once you do it, you can't change your mind. Right. Stuff like that, easy things to live with.
Right.
So we do all that, and then we get your countable assets down below $2,000.
Yeah.
But everything else is in some other posture, right?
Oh yeah.
So now we file the application. Why? Because now we have a 100% probability of success because we know you're eligible. I know what the rules are. I've evaluated the situation, and where you weren't eligible, we fixed.
Yes.
We made it eligible,
Yeah.
okay? So, we're not manipulating the answers. We're just not sending in the answers to the questions until the answers are the way we want them. And so we have to do stuff to get the answers the way we want them. So if you have an annuity, a regular annuity with, I don't know, Merrill Lynch or something like that, well, that's not Medicaid compliant. It's not a big deal to turn that into a Medicaid compliant annuity, but that's something we have to do. We have to cash it out, take the value, and purchase a Medicaid compliant annuity. Now it's okay. So he's got $500,000 in an annuity, and now if we put it into a Medicaid compliant annuity, 10-Care says that is now a non-countable asset, and so we do that. So that takes a little time. So we do all that. Now when we get you eligible in all three categories, now we send in the application because now we've got a 100% probability of success.
Yes.
And I have never failed to get somebody eligible. Sometimes they come back and they don't agree with us, and we have to go to hearing. But I've never failed to get somebody eligible. Even some cases that kind of concerned me about the eligibility, of what was going on. We've always, we always managed to do that, and that's the way to get eligible because now you get, we spend 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. It just depends on what all we got to deal with. Doing all this, get the application we want it. We send it in. Now we've got the 10-Care. Now you've got what your courts say you're entitled to, and they'll start paying the bill. Now, once again, the income always goes to cost of care. So let's just say for round numbers, you got $2,000 worth of income, and your bill's $9,000 a month, which is the average. So every month, somebody's writing a check from your bank account where it gets direct deposited for the $2,000, and it goes. Now, let me refine that a little bit. The income is defined as this: it's all the income you get, minus your medical insurance cost, which would be the stuff you pay for Medicare, right?
Right.
Then minus $50 personal needs allowance. God bless them, they let you have $50 to spend on stuff. They say you need $50. You want to buy razor blades, get a haircut, go to Walmart.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever even driven through the parking lot of Walmart where I spent $50. You sure can't go in and come out unless that.
Those numbers need to be adjusted.
You know what? The biggest one out of 50 states is 300.
Really?
And that's still not much.
Still not much.
And so then what's left over is what we're calling income. And then that all goes to cost of care every month for as long as you are living in the nursing home. But what's going to happen is 10-Care's now, let's say all that works out after we take those two things away, you have $2,000 even. 10-Care is going to pay $7,000 a month. Now, in reality, it's quasi-monopoly money. You know how you deal with insurance companies, and they say, well, insurance isn't covering this, it costs $200. And you say, okay, well, if the insurance doesn't cover it, what's the non-insurance rate? They say, well, just send us 100 and we'll call it even. You know, okay, so it's that kind of money when TennCare pays, but they're paying the balance now, right?
Exactly.
And so they're paying, and so now you're eligible, and you're getting that. Now, what you're getting back, you know, should you feel bad about shifting it to the third-party state? A couple of reasons. No. One, you've paid for this. You're entitled to it. Why should you have to pay for it again if you actually need it? Not everybody goes into long-term care. You and I don't even know if we're going to go there, right?
That's right.
If we do, why should we have to pay for it again? We've been paying for it. If we never go in, we paid for it for a long time and never used it. I mean, that's kind of how these systems work, but they can't penalize the people that need it because of that, which is what the thought process is. It's like, when you go in there, you need to pay them a second time. You're being punished now, and that's what we're going to want to avoid.
Yeah.
So, you know, so don't feel bad that you do that. Now, the other reason you shouldn't feel bad is the statute kind of requires you to shift it to the third-party state. As a matter of fact, they do it. You have to read it like a lawyer, kind of thing. They do it in this way, but the statute says that you are in private pay mode, but you can enter a non-payment mode, meaning just your income is have to pay. Non-payment mode if you are filing the paperwork and taking the steps that are necessary to shift the burden to a third party.
Yeah.
Meaning, and they list the third parties, which are be insurance companies, or and TennCare is one of the first third party that's mentioned. Yeah. So if you're doing that, you know, you transfer from paying them all of it to non-paying it. So if you turns out you don't do that or refuse to do that, then you have to pay yourself. So they're encouraging you and giving you this special status to apply for TennCare and get TennCare to pay the bill. So the question is, oh, that's welfare. I don't want to be involved in welfare. It's not welfare. It is a form. There is a form of welfare, but I don't even deal with that. This is not. This is TennCare Medicaid. Yeah. It is not a welfare program. You are entitled to it. This is how you get it.
That's enlightening a little bit.
And get them to pay it.
I think that's enlightening to people. It is to me.
Yeah. I mean, you shouldn't feel bad about it. It's what it's there for. It's designed to do that. Now, you know, there's certain ways where they recover so they can pay for the program. You know, one of them's called estate recovery. I don't have enough time to talk about that, but that's stuff they do after death. I have talked about it in the past. Sure. Probably a good thing to talk about sometime in the future. But that's kind of, you know, the question was, what does all that look like? Yes. Medicare, Medicaid, and how does TennCare fit into that? And that's how it fits in. And so, and those are the basics, you know, very superficially. But there's all those things I talked about. There's tons of rules on how they work.
Well, I certainly learned some stuff today. And that my question was, you know, exactly what is TennCare and the system. And I think we've got a pretty well.
Well, there's a lot more to it.
There's more to it, I'm sure, but that's a good overview right there of how it comes. Because I don't think I realized that it was. Maybe if I'd thought about it, but I don't think I realized it was federal, just converted to run by the state runs it and converts the name to TennCare. Yep, that's interesting.
So listen, we're getting close to the end, so let me just go over a few things that I mentioned earlier. You know, we got a seminar coming up.
That's right.
We just had one, and this one we're having is kind of quick, but I don't schedule them, so I just go where I'm told. Yeah. But I am told it could be here on November the 18th, which is a Saturday. Yes. At 10 o'clock, we're going to have a seminar here, Will's Trust in the Nursing Home. We're going to talk about it. We won't go into stuff in that depth we just did. Yeah. But, you know, I think it would be helpful to you if you listen to me on this radio or any of the other radio shows that I do. You get bits and pieces because not everybody can always listen every time. Right. And if you come to the seminar, I think that'll help a lot of what we talk about make sense. Yeah, so come to that. Call my office at the Pierchoski Estate Law, Pierchoski Elder Law at 931-363-7222. Or you can go to my website, which is estateplanstand.com. That's ESTATE, planstand.com. And you can see my calendar and see what's coming up. You can get my email and ask a question that way if you want. Or you can call me and schedule one of my 15-minute phone calls. Right. You know, those work very well because you give a question to one of the gals and they'll give it to me. And when I call you back, I will have given it a little bit of thought. And then my time is dedicated to that call. So it's a great way to do it.
Bulletproof Estate Planning.
Bulletproof Estate Planning with your host, Estate Plan Stan.
That's right. Always good, always informative. And really today, I was kind of fascinated to hear all those points that you brought out about TennCare and how the system actually works. And there's a lot more to it that we haven't even got to, I'm sure.
Well, that's what you get me to do for you.
Don't forget the seminar coming up on November the 18th. there's a lot more from Stan yet to come. We'll see you next Friday, buddy.
See you next week.
7FD Lawrenceburg, broadcast services of Prospect Communications.